us on 94.9 FM in Dakar through our website www.wadr.org.
News, talk, music, get it all
24 hours
on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Here are the top stories. The U.S. Embassy in Mali urges its citizens to leave rising terror threat and fuel crisis. Independent candidates challenge exclusion from Guinea's electoral process, petition Supreme Court to suspend sponsorship code.
We demand an immediate revision of the conditions of the sponsorship so that it is accessible to all candidates, including independents.
Ivorian police summons opposition executives over possible link to public demonstrations, despite incumbent Ouattara's re-election. And Ghana's Speaker of Parliament orders reintroduction of controversial anti-LGBTQ bill in Parliament.
Ghanaians wanted this bill passed through private members' bill, and so we'll process it as private members' bill. It has to come back to the Speaker.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
My name is Sankule Janko. Many thanks for joining our broadcast this afternoon. Newslink begins right here in Senegal as two journalists have been arrested for conducting interviews with fugitive journalist Mam Jamal Njane, who is currently in France. Babacar Fall of Radio Future Media was taken into custody this Wednesday morning. According to colleagues, plainclothes police officers surrounded the RFM office before his arrest. A day earlier, Maimouna Ndour Faye, head of 7 TV, was also detained at her station's office for the same reason. Authorities have not yet provided details on the charges or the next step in the legal process. Now let's head to the Sahel, particularly Mali, where the United States Embassy is urging all American citizens to leave the country immediately, warning of a worsening security situation. The alert follows a surge in attacks by terrorist group JNIM in recent weeks. While Bamako's international airport remains open, the embassy cautions against traveling by road due to frequent ambushes on major roads. The warning comes as Mali faces severe fuel shortage that has disrupted daily life and economic activities nationwide. Francis Boniface has more in this report.
The United States Embassy urged its citizens to leave the country due to the worsening security situation. The embassy cited a surge in attacks by terrorist group JNIM in recent weeks as the main reason for the advisory. It noted that Bamako's international airport remains open and that commercial flights are still available. However, the embassy warned against traveling by land, citing frequent terrorist attacks along major routes connecting Mali to neighboring countries. For U.S. citizens who choose to remain in Mali, the embassy advised developing emergency plans, stocking essential supplies, and preparing to shelter in place for an extended period in the event of a sudden deterioration in security. The alert comes amid a severe and ongoing fuel shortage that has disrupted economic activity across the country. Since early October, Mali has been grappling with what officials describe as an unprecedented fuel crisis affecting several regions.
Francis Boniface reporting. In Guinea, independent candidates are criticizing their exclusion from the electoral process established by the General Directorate of Elections and the new electoral code. They claim that municipal mayors are refusing to sponsor them as required by the code and are instead favoring the transitional president, General Mamadi Doumbouya. On Tuesday, the aggrieved candidates appealed to the Supreme Court requesting the suspension of the sponsorship process. Christopher Aticho has the details in this report.
The concerns of independent aspirants come just days before the deadline for submitting candidate list for the December 28th presidential election. They accuse certain heads of special delegations of refusing to endorse their candidacies. Manjo Moruf Sidibe serves as their spokesperson.
We have regretfully noticed our inability to meet the conditions of the sponsorship as planned by the Electoral Code. No special delegation president has agreed to sign our sponsorship forms. Most of them have stated that they must refer to their hierarchs. It turns out that this same authority seems to be a candidate for the presidential election, contrary to the democratic spirit, to the principles of equality, and to the political pluralism enshrined by the Constitution.
In addition, these independent candidates filed a petition with the Supreme Court on Tuesday, requesting the suspension of the sponsorship process.
We demand an immediate revision of the conditions of the sponsorship so that it is accessible to all candidates, including independents, allowing registered voters to freely sponsor the candidates of their choice. The suspension of institutional sponsorship by special delegations as long as the elected mayors are not in office.
The independent aspirants for the December presidential election are advocating for the establishment of a citizen sponsorship system. They maintain the need for an inclusive dialogue with the Directorate General of Elections, DGE, the Ministry of Territorial Administration, and other relevant candidates.
A report from Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Balde in Conakry, voiced by Christopher Aticho. In Côte d'Ivoire, the criminal police summoned 7 senior officials of Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire, PDCI, RDA, on Tuesday, October 28, 2025. All of those summoned hold key positions within Common Front, an alliance formed between PDCI, RDA, and the PPACI. No details have been released regarding the reasons for their summons. This development comes shortly after the presidential election, in which President Alassane Ouattara secured re-election for a 4th term with 89.77% of the vote cast. Abdullah Hassan tells us more in this report.
The opposition executives include Alain Kokwatre, Augustin Jahufeit Yoho, Georges Philippe Ezale, Noel Akosi Benjo, Roger Mbia, Sylvester Emo, and Jean Kwaku Rangbe. This latest summon is judicial in nature and concerns several officials of the Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire, PDCI. These individuals are all members of the Common Front coalition, through which Laurent Gbagbo and Tidiane Cham sought to prevent what they describe as the unconstitutional 4th term of President Alassane Ouattara. There has been no clarification regarding the purpose of their summons, though it is likely linked to their participation in demonstrations organized by the joint coalition known as the Common Front. Following the summons of these PDCI members, Michel Gbagbo, a PPACI official and son of former President Laurent Gbagbo, was also summoned to the police prefecture in the Abobo district of Abidjan. Similar to the 7 others, no information has been provided on the reasons for the summons of the Yopougon MP, which instructed him to appear before the criminal police with his lawyer. Before the presidential election, the PDCI-PPACI Common Front had opposed President Alassane Ouattara's bid for a 4th term. Several demonstrations across Côte d'Ivoire resulted in casualties, yet this protest did not prevent the election from taking place. Despite the coalition's protest, Ouattara was re-elected with 89.77% of the vote cast.
Abdullah Hassan with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Benin, members of the opposition Democrats Party are calling for the continuation of a peaceful electoral process towards 2026 general elections. They made a statement on Tuesday, the day after the party dual candidacy was invalidated by the Constitutional Court. The opposition party also denounces internal difficulties and leadership rivalries, as well as unfavorable political climate in Benin. Imo Edet completes the story.
In their statement, members of the political party, the Democrats, called for the electoral process to continue. They also called for the preservation of peace and national cohesion. Patrick Jivo was a spokesperson for the day.
In the current situation, where the power of the state must change hands, our political and civic responsibility requires us to wish that the ongoing process goes to its end in peace and concord, and that the two remaining duos will not lose sight of the social expectations of many of us.
The political party also frowned at the invalidation of its candidate duo's applications. It denounces internal difficulties and leadership rivalries while pointing to an unfavorable political climate in Benin. Patrick Jivo describes the situation as a combination of factors that has compromised the party's effective participation in the 2026 presidential election.
The party, the Democrats, has nourished the ambition to conquer the power of the state to redress public action without compromising the achievements of successive regimes that have been in charge of presiding over the destiny of our country. But allies, the opportunity to do so, the proof will not be offered.
The elected officials emphasized that the party will continue its actions in accordance with Republican rules. As the process unfolds, the Democrat deputies urge activists to remain mobilized and strengthen internal cohesion.
Imo added with details of that report filed by Adam Sule in Cotonou. Now let's focus on some parliamentary issues. First in Nigeria, where today, October 29, the Nigerian Senate will screen the newly appointed service chiefs at the request of President Bola Tinubu for their confirmation. The decision comes amid the public debate over the abrupt changes in the military hierarchy, which some critics have associated with a purported coup attempt. WDR's Usman Omar reports from Abuja.
In compliance with the provisions of Section 18(1) of the Armed Forces Act, Cap A20, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, I am pleased to present for confirmation by the Senate the appointment of Lieutenant General O. Oluide as Chief of Defense Staff.
That was President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, reading a communication from President Bola Tinubu requesting the Senate to confirm the appointment of General Olufemi Oloyede as the new Chief of Defense Staff and other service chiefs. Following the latter's presentation, the Senate changed its earlier plans and announced that the screening would take place today, Wednesday, October 29, to allow the new military leaders to assume duties immediately. President Tinubu had previously urged the upper chamber to fast-track the process and ensure effective coordination of the country's security operations. The reshuffle last week resulted in General Olufemi Oloyede replacing General Christopher Musa as Chief of Defense Staff, while Major General EAP Udiende was retained as Chief of Defense Intelligence. The President described these changes as part of efforts to strengthen Nigeria's national security architecture. This move has sparked reactions from opposition parties and political observers who are calling for greater transparency regarding the reasons behind the sudden changes. However, security analyst Saliu Dantata says the President reserves the right to remove and appoint anyone at any time.
Mr. President is the President and Commander-in-Chief, and at any time he has the constitutional right to relieve whoever he feels, and word over, this is the practice. Once you appoint service chiefs, particularly when you are facing insecurity, if you are not getting the reason for why you appointed them, you relieve them and allow other ones to go.
In the meantime, the Senate Committee of the Whole is expected to conduct the screening during plenary today, with confirmation expected shortly afterward. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
In Ghana, Speaker of Parliament Oban Bagbin has ruled that the controversial anti-LGBTQ+ bill must be reintroduced in the current parliament. The Speaker justifies that the bill expired with the dissolution of the 8th Parliament. This clarification comes after a week of uncertainty and debate among lawmakers following the majority leader's argument that the bill had already been passed by the previous Parliament and therefore did not need to be reintroduced. However, the Speaker firmly disagreed, explaining that all pending business before the 8th Parliament lapsed when the Parliament was dissolved. He emphasized that the 9th Parliament must now take up the bill anew.
We have a new parliament, and therefore what was pending there came to an end and had to be reintroduced. It was actually transmitted to the former president. They wrote to tell us that they would not assent to it. The only constitutional error they committed was they didn't give us the reasons why they would not assent to it, and they did not also transmit the bill back to us. So the 9 parliaments on resumption took back the bill, and as you recall, that's a private member's bill. And so members of this House took it up. They've gone through the whole process as detailed out in our standing orders. But as it went through the process, the new government indicated that they wanted to take it as a public bill. I personally disagreed. I made it known to His Excellency the President that Ghanaians wanted this bill passed through private members' bill. And so be it. We'll process it as private members' bill. It has to come back to the Speaker.
Ghana's Speaker of Parliament, Obang Bagbin. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio on 94.9 FM Dakar. Here's a reminder of our top stories. U.S. Embassy urges Americans to leave Mali amid rising terror threat and fuel crisis. Independent candidates challenge exclusion from Guinea's elections. Petition Supreme Court to suspend sponsorship code. Ivorian police summons opposition executives over possible link to public demonstrations despite incumbent Wadra's re-election. And Ghana's Speaker of Parliament orders reintroduction of controversial anti-LGBTQ plus bill in Parliament. All still ahead, former Prime Minister Komi Solom Kalusu, elected President of Togo's National Assembly. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Togo, former Prime Minister Komi Solom Kalusu has been elected as the President of the National Assembly. He took on this role during the second plenary session of the second ordinary session of 2025, which was held on Tuesday. During this session, members whose seats had become vacant to a compatibility were replaced. Well, Augustine Colley has the details in this report.
A well-known face on the Togolese political scene is back in action. Komi Solom Kalusu, former Prime Minister and a long-time leader of the presidential party, Union for the Republic, UNI, was elected President of the National Assembly on Tuesday. At 65, he returns to the post he once held a decade ago. In his address, Kalusu, the new president of the Togolese National Assembly, says,
"This choice honors me, but above all, it imposes on me a duty to be president who listens to everyone for the Republican values that make up the Fifth Republic. I commit myself to working with loyalty and determination to be worthy of it."
14 new deputies took office within the National Assembly in accordance with the legal provisions governing the statutes of MPs and the management of cases of incompatibility of functions. They will participate in parliamentary work, including the examination of bills and proposed laws, as well as the activities of standing committees. Pacom Ajuruvi is the Minister of Justice.
It is a strong signal for the beginning of parliamentarism, which all deputies will now confront. Man of the field, man of experience. I have already said it. He will carry very high the voices of our deputies for a stronger, more democratic Togo and a Togo that will always work for the well-being of all Togolese.
The election of these new Togolese members of parliament took place in a political context where the National Assembly plays a central role in the examination and adoption of laws, as well as in the control of government actions. The election of these new Togolese members of parliament took place in a political context where the National Assembly plays a central role in the examination and adoption of laws, as well as the control of government action.
A report from Sylvie Wadrago in Lome, voiced by Augustine Colley. Elsewhere, the government of Liberia, in collaboration with the World Bank, is hosting the Digital Week in the capital, Monrovia. The initiative represents a strategic effort to integrate the country into the global digital ecosystem and harness technology for national development. This Digital Week aims to consolidate insights from key digital projects, promote high-level dialogue, and foster collaboration across sectors to accelerate Liberia's digital transformation. Well, WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
During the launch of the event on Tuesday, Sekou Kroman, Minister of Posts and Telecommunications, highlighted the role of digital technologies as a tools for promoting inclusive growth, transparent governance, and enhancing national resilience. Minister Kroman stated that Digital Liberia Week reflects the government's unwavering commitment to coordinated action, strategic foresight, and inclusive progress.
We will also engage in critical consultation on digital agriculture, digital skills, two pillars that will shape the livelihood and opportunities of our people. From farmers to youth, from entrepreneurs to educators, we must ensure that digital transformation is felt in every corner of our society.
The three-day event will unveil essential reports and frameworks, including a comprehensive assessment of the telecommunication market. Joshua Wadr, World Bank country manager to Liberia, emphasized the critical importance of a robust digital foundation to ensure Liberia's connectivity both regionally and globally. She identified reliable networks, resilient systems, and effective institutions as key components of this foundation.
Digital technologies are not just tools, but they're enablers of better governance, private investment, and job creation.
These 3-day assessments align with Sustainable Development Goal 9, which focuses on building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, let's go back to Nigeria for our guest interview segment. Well, today, October 29, the Nigerian Senate will screen the newly appointed service chiefs at the request of President Bola Tinubu for their confirmation. This decision comes amidst public debate over the abrupt changes in the military hierarchy, which some critics have associated with a purported coup. Well, for more, I'm joined by Moma Laz, security and political observer, for more details.
One can't be too sure what prompted the president to suddenly change the service chiefs. Normally, when service chiefs are supposed to be changed, either some of them are got into retirement age or stuff. But of course, the president has the right to change the service chiefs at any time he so desires. We can't say exactly what is likely to be the problem. It could be loyalty issues, it could be the lack of performance issues, it could be the ongoing rumors around the country around the issues of a coup plot or whatever, or it could just be a mix of all this. But what we know for certain is that the service chiefs have been changed abruptly without any prior notice. So here we have rumors of coup flying, and then suddenly service chiefs are changed. Of course, no one can beat their chest and say, yes, I have the authority to speak that this is the reason why this president has changed the service chiefs. But be that as it may, he has done it. But what is more curious to observers like us is the fact that when service chiefs are changed, it's always a wholesale change, from the military to the Air Force, the Navy to the Naval Service, and even to the police. But here we have a situation where the service chiefs are changed, but the police hierarchy is still there. So it's something that is a bit kind of curious to observers.
And talking about the coup, how could the ongoing public debate and rumors of a purported coup attempt affect military morale and Nigeria's internal security stability?
Yeah, the issue here is that as I speak, unless I'm starting to be corrected, there is no official statement from the military command, and there is no official statement also from the National Security Advisor's office. There is also no official information from the president himself addressing the issue of a coup or either of that. So since there is no official position on that, I wonder how the military can begin to look at that as a morale damper. Because although maybe some might say maybe because of the sudden change in the service chief, some that might be loyal to the outgoing service chief, or of course there are rumors of the high number of top military brass that are going to go with the service chiefs, because of course when service chiefs are changed, there is always this outflow of a lot of military top brass. And from media reports, we are hearing almost like 60-something senior military officers are penciled down for departure. So, of course, that can, in a way, dampen military morale, especially for those who are aspiring for a longer career span and all of that. But be that as it may, since there is no official statement from government on that nature, I don't think any military officer should use that as a yardstick to start dampening their morale.
Finally, sir, before I let you go, will the confirmation of the new service chiefs lead to any real improvement in Nigeria's security strategy and situation as a whole?
Yeah, it's left to be seen. It's left to be seen because for me, if you ask me to assess the past service chiefs, the only assessment I can use to assess them is the incidences of insecurity attacks, either from bandits or from insurgents. Say for the past 6 months, compared to what has been happening in the country, there has been a bit of a slight improvement, not very remarkable, just a very slight improvement in terms of attacks from even the headsmen here in North Central or in the Far East. Although, yes, we had a rumor of an attack in Northeast. So if you are looking at the incidences of security situation, you can say they didn't do too poorly. They didn't perform too poorly compared to the spate and incidences or intensity of the attacks that used to happen 6 months earlier than now. Based on that, the new service chiefs might want to ride on that and keep improving on what is going on. They wouldn't want to have a situation whereby the law will fizzle out and then we start having another spate of attacks. So I want to believe that they want to ride on the back of the little respite that we are experiencing now, to ride on the back of that and make it stronger. So of course, I expect them to ride on the back of all this that I've said earlier to deliver to the president. Our delivery here means more security and safety for Nigeria.
Momlaz is a security and political observer. Well, in sports, 12 nations have booked their spots at the Dakar Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2026. Host Morocco, runners-up in the last 2 editions, will once again count on passionate home support as they chase their first ever continental showdown. But the Super Falcons of Nigeria, 10-time champions, remain the team to beat, hungry for an 11th title. Ghana, South Africa and Zambia bring serious pedigree, while Cape Verde and Malawi makes history with their first ever qualifications. Kenya and Burkina Faso return to the stage ready to prove their worth. While rising forces like Senegal, Algeria and Tanzania add that to a competition that is more competitive than ever. And the stakes, they couldn't be higher. The top 4 teams will qualify directly for the 2027 Women's World Cup in Brazil, with 2 more heading to intercontinental playoffs. So every match, every point, every goal will count. The road to Morocco 2026 is set, and African women football is rising faster than ever. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismail Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live at WADR.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is WADR's gender program 50-50 with Na Didi Tete. I am Sankule Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.